I realized that the food I eat makes a difference in my performance. Honestly, having a growth-oriented mindset where you're always working on just getting better, realizing, you're a work in progress, but also being humble really brings a lot of peace. You got to pee and you got to poop your way to good health. We got to get rid of the bad stuff.
Welcome to the Health Insights Podcast. In this episode, we're joined by Dr. David Jockers, a renowned expert in natural and functional medicine. Dr. Jockers shares his inspiring journey from a young athlete influenced by his mother's holistic approach to health to becoming a leading voice in the integrative health space. He discusses the critical role of nutrition in performance and overall well-being, the importance of mindset, and how our modern lifestyle impacts our health. Dr. Jockers emphasizes the need for a compelling vision in life to drive positive change and shares practical strategies for optimizing health through sleep, breathing, and nutrition. This show is brought to you by Thea Health, dedicated to empowering individuals to take control of their health and well-being. Visit theahealth.ai to learn more. All right, let's dive into today's enlightening conversation.
Dr. Jockers, welcome and excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Boris. Great to be here.
For sure. Let's dive into one thing that I think gets a lot of misconception. Natural doctor versus medical doctor. You've been in the natural, functional, integrative space, //. There's the public is very polarizing on this topic. I still feel to this day, I think it's maybe changing a little bit, but what prompted you to kind of go down this path versus maybe the medical doctor path? And was there like key aha moments in your life or like life events that made you go, wow, this is really useful and I really want to dedicate my life to this cause?
Well, for sure. Well, my mom actually growing up, she was a nurse who then became a midwife, and then she became a massage therapist and eventually a naturopath. And so growing up, she had us on all kinds of diets. I mean, back in the early 90s, the macrobiotic diet, if you ever heard of that, that was like the popular thing. And that she had us on that, which is basically like lima beans and like boiled kale. And it's very bland. It's very low fat, no salt. And so as a kid, I rebelled against it. But my mom did a great job of linking food to performance. So for example, my older brother had a lot of acne. And she would say that's because he's eating too much sugar and he's getting these chocolate bars and candy, and that's what's causing his acne. Most kids never learn that. They don't learn that it's actually in a diet that they're consuming that's causing that. Yeah. And then I was an athlete growing up. So I remember distinctly asking my mom, like, why do I have to eat this kale? Right? just wondering, like, why am I eating this? It tastes horrible.
Yeah.
And she would be like, well, that's going to help you have more energy. Your bones are going to be stronger. Your muscles are going to be stronger. You're going to be able to play better. Like I was a baseball and basketball player. She's like, you'll probably shoot better if you eat that. Yeah. And I'm like, anything that's going to help me shoot better, be a better pitcher, I'll eat more of that kale. Make me a whole bowl, right? You know what I mean? My mentality was, I'll sacrifice to perform better. That's always been my mentality as an athlete. And so once she told me that the food I eat could impact my performance, I was all in. I was like, okay, whatever's healthy, like you just tell me, I'm going to eat it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the way that throughout my teens, that's how I was. And so even though I would, obviously from time to time eat junk food and things like that, I ate way healthier than most teenagers because I realized that the food I eat makes a difference in my performance. And then I became a personal trainer in my late teens, early 20s. I got really into fitness. And as a personal trainer, again, the same thing, and I was teaching other people that the way you eat impacts your performance. I didn't know what I know today, right? And ultimately, the way I was eating actually ended up leading me to have irritable bowel syndrome in my early 20s and having a lot of gut issues. But I always understood, even when I developed those gut issues, I realized I got to change something with my diet. And I was eating from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, packing in 6,000 calories, right, in order to maintain my muscle mass, like most people back in those days were doing if they wanted to be a trainer, if they wanted to, have a great physique. I didn't know any better. That's just what I learned in Men's Health, And then I started reading outside of kind of the mainstream and learned, okay, wow. In fact, I came across a book that was called The No Grain Diet by Dr. Mercola, very cutting edge back in 2004, 2005 when I read that. And so I took grains out of my diet, which happened to be in every single meal that I would eat. Right. And, his diet approach was a high protein, all real foods, high protein diet. And that's what helped me heal from the irritable bowel, get my life and my health back. And then I just realized, wow, nutrition is so critical to overall health.
Mm.
And so I want to help other people with this. And around the same time, I had started chiropractic college. And so chiropractic was a philosophy that said the body can heal itself. It doesn't need any help, just no interference. What's interfering with the body's ability to heal? Well, it could be bad food, right? It could be bad mindset, toxic mentality. It could be, environmental toxins. It could be structural damage to the spine and the nervous system. And so it all made sense to me. And as a practitioner, our job is to help identify and help the client remove those interferences so the body can do what it was designed to do, which is to heal, to repair, and to adapt to the stressors in our environment. And to me, that made so much sense. And that was the inspiration for me to get into that.
Very cool story. And I think obviously your mom's influence had something to do with
Definitely.
you always being curious and understanding impact. A couple things I don't want to dive into because I think a lot of people will resonate with this. It feels like when you were younger, the thing that got you to listen to advice of eat this and not that was you were very committed to being an athlete, which was something important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I love your opinion on this is if somebody doesn't have something important to them where you can tie lifestyle changes around that thing, they don't really care because they're comfortable and they're not going to change until something breaks. What made you want to be a better athlete? Was it that you were becoming better and so you had momentum behind that and so you didn't want to break that momentum? Like, how did you become, because sometimes people don't have an end goal.
Yeah.
And then therefore it's hard to tell them, hey, you should do all these things to be better. They're like, what for though, right? Like if you have nothing to go towards, why would I want to get better? So I know you were young, but was there like, did you just kind of get thrown into it and then you liked it being an athlete or was there more of a conscious?
It's a good question. It's a nature versus nurture type thing. I think for me, I'm naturally wired I'm a very competitive type personality and so for me, how I perform, how I show up each day is really important to me.
Yeah.
And I want to show up and be my best. I want to be the best. At this point, I would say I'm an occupational athlete, right? I want to show up and I want to perform at my best for my wife, right? Be the best husband I can be. For my kids, I want to be the best father. I've got 4 young kids. I want to be the best father I can be. I want to be the best businessman, the best speaker. If I'm doing an interview like this, I want to give my best, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, God has given me so much. The least I can do is just show up and be my best for the people around me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that's my natural wiring. And I think there are other people that perhaps their experiences in life or just the way that they're built, it's harder for them to develop that drive.
Right.
And that's a big thing I'll tell people is like, you need a compelling vision for your life.
Yeah.
Right. The Bible talks about, it says, for a lack of knowledge and vision, my people perish, right? So we have to understand things, right? If we're talking about health, we got to understand the right foods to eat, the right lifestyle strategies, but we also have to have a compelling vision in order to put it in action. Somebody can know, you and I both know things in our life. Like we've learned, like in my marriage, for example, I've heard other people give advice to do certain things. And yet if I don't have a compelling enough vision, I don't do it. And then I'm like, that was a good idea, but I didn't actually put it into practice. So all of us do this. This is just part of life. But the more compelling our vision is for what we want in our future, whether it's our marriage, our health, our business, our relationships, all of those things, the more we're actually going to put these positive practices into action. And so I think if you're not there yet, try to take a moment and think of a compelling vision. Something that really compels you. They say you need a why that makes you cry, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you have kids that you want to be, fully available for. When I was growing up, I was an athlete, but my dad always had health problems. He had back pain. He worked at computers all the time, sat too much. And so he was always in pain. He couldn't get out there and play with me.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, when I have kids, I'm not going to be like that. Right. Like I want to be out there. And so now I'm in my 40s. I got young kids. My 2 boys, I coach them year round in different sports. And I'm playing with them every single day. Right. And I'm in my 40s. I'm like, I want to be doing this with my grandkids. Like,
Yeah.
I want to be out there playing basketball with them, playing baseball, whatever sport we're playing. I want to be doing that with them. That's a compelling vision for me
Yeah.
to make sure that I'm taking great care of my health. So people have to figure out, what is that compelling vision? Do you want to lift your grandchild, run on the beach with them, lift them up over your head?
Mhm.
Try to think of a compelling vision, a why that literally can bring emotion to you and make you cry in a sense.
Yeah.
If it can evoke that emotion, then it's strong enough to help you start making those lifestyle changes.
Mm.
And so that's really what you need is you have to take a moment, step back from the challenges that you're in right now, which I know can be like magnified when we're in them,
Yeah.
and take a step back and try to think, okay, what's the big picture?
Mhm.
What is the big picture of my life? Where do I want to be a year from now, 6 months from now, 5 years, 10 years? What would it look like if I'm 30, 40 pounds overweight? What would it look like and how would it impact the people around me if I lost that weight in the next 6 months
Mhm.
and I looked slim and fit and I had twice the amount of energy that I have right now and my brain was functioning better? I was able to perform better in every area of my life. What would that mean to my wife? What would that mean to my kids? What would that mean to my parents or my friends, my coworkers? How would they now see me, right? And what kind of light would they see me?
Mm.
And what kind of impact can I make to help influence them, the other people around me, to make this world better?
Yeah. Amazing. And it's very, very evident and clear how passionate, emotional, and committed you are to that vision of yourself. I'd love for maybe your opinion or strategies or maybe even tactics to get somebody out of their head who don't have that vision, who aren't, you've practiced this, you preach it
Hmm.
daily, right? If somebody's stuck, have you seen things that maybe sometimes help more than others in terms of how do I step back? What
Mm.
are the thought processes I should go after? Should I work with a coach to maybe help me get out of my head? Like, have you seen any? Because you've
Yeah.
impacted lots of people. You create a lot of content. You have amazing courses, right? And so I'm sure you guys have developed strategies that maybe get people over that hump. And a sliver of that would be super useful for anybody listening if you have it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I would say step back from wherever you're at, whatever your normal routine is, step back. It could be something as simple as adding in a morning walk. And on that walk, use that as time to try to really think about your life, right?
Yeah.
If you're a spiritual person, pray during that period of time, right?
Mm.
And so taking just a daily walk can be one of the best practices. In fact, people like Albert Einstein took a daily walk and he would come up with some of his best ideas, Thomas
Yeah.
Edison, right? And so just taking a walk every single day out in nature if possible. Obviously it's raining, get on a treadmill, right? But, if you can get out in nature, even better, and take a 10-minute walk, 20-minute walk, and just try to clear your mind, right? And that walking is so therapeutic for itself, right? It gets more oxygen in your brain, helps move your lymphatics, good for your blood glucose, good for your circadian rhythm. So many benefits to it, but also it will help you think more creatively and kind of see a bigger picture for your life.
Mm.
Try to see it from like the 30,000 foot view is what, is kind of the term, where you're, instead of being so magnified in the moment, it's almost like you're on a helicopter looking down and you kind of see how small you are. And even though the challenges seem big when you're in the moment, when you're on the helicopter looking down at yourself, they seem really small, right? And now
Mhm.
you kind of see the bigger picture of everything in your life.
Yeah.
And that can be really, really helpful. So I think just having a practice like that can be, can be extremely helpful. And then from there, try to ask yourself, and you got to be really raw and honest with yourself. Okay. And this is also, it's also if you're in a relationship, like with your spouse, it can be hard, but like actually ask for feedback,
Mhm.
right? Some of the best advice I've gotten is actually from my wife, and I wanted to resist it.
Right.
And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, she's wrong. She didn't understand this. You know what I mean? Like, she didn't understand. She's not accepting me, right? But like, she's bold enough to tell me what I need to hear that
Yeah.
most people around me are just not,
Mm.
right? We have a relationship where, you know what, she can tell me that. And so I just need to like kind of shut up and listen and get over my initial defensiveness quiet down my mind and say, hey, there's probably this high likelihood there's some truth in this.
Mm.
And I need to take accountability for that and just accept that, she's feeling this way because of the way that I'm acting. And I need to take accountability and see where I can improve. Right. And so having somebody, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a best friend, somebody that's close to you that can hold you accountable, so critical. And it could be a coach. You mentioned hiring a coach. Hey, especially if it's an area that you're just getting into, you don't feel like you have the knowledge, having somebody that can help give you knowledge, but also help you cast vision and point towards that vision and then hold you accountable, I think is super key.
Amazing. I think you made a really good point, which was I'm gonna get this feedback and it feels uncomfortable, and then I calm myself down and I allow myself to hear it. I think a lot of people have a tremendous amount of problem doing that with anybody,
Mm.
even their spouse. How did you get to the point where you're open to that? Was it you practiced it, you kind of planned for it, you thought about when I get feedback, I'm gonna calm down, take a second. Like, is there some
Mm.
strategies that you've implemented over practice? Because most people are just like, "Oh, you're gonna be negative toward me. I don't even want to talk to
Mm.
you." Walls, walls,
Yeah.
walls.
Yeah.
Obviously, the most important thing is you want to be able to look at yourself and improve, and
Yeah.
iterations of that make you better over the years, right? So it'd be interesting to hear
Yeah.
from your point of view anyway, how have you approached it where you got to this place where you're now comfortable with that type of feedback? As you said, most people are not.
Yeah. That's a great question. I would just say for me, it's been a lot of prayer because I would say that pride has been my greatest downfall, right? There's a lot of benefits to pride. I'm very self-confident as a person, and that has gotten me far. But pride has a double-edged sword,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
you could totally miss your blind spots, right? And totally miss things that you should be able to see
Yeah.
because you have an overinflated, opinion of yourself or the things that you're doing.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just been a lot of prayer of like, God, I just want to die to my pride. Like I want to have an open mind. I want to be a humble
Yeah.
servant that you can use. And so for me, that's just been a daily prayer. And I find that I'm much more at peace. I'm much more calm. I'm less reactive. I can learn better. I have better relationships. Um, I'm a better father. Every area of my life is better
Hmm.
when I lay down my pride. And I'm not perfect by any means, right? But I found that has been just a great practice for me. That's helped me just have more peace
Yeah.
and a greater advantage in life.
Awesome. Very cool. Let's dive a little bit into modern day healthcare systems. I know you guys have programs, you've been doing this for a long time. You have tools, books,
Hmm.
etc. What do you feel like, or what's your pulse on? What are some of the most common challenges you're seeing with people's health these days, maybe comparatively to the past?
Yeah,
Is it different? Is it pretty much the same thing? Like, what's kind of your pulse on that topic?
that's a great question. I would say 20 years ago, when I was a personal trainer and just getting into chiropractic school, and even just like myself as a case study, for me, just making nutrition changes, and I think I added in like probiotics, one supplement, and made a huge difference in my life. Now we're seeing people that their toxic bucket, we're all exposed to toxins, and it's kind of like we have this bucket. And if our drainage and detox pathways are open, as toxins are coming in, they're being eliminated. But for most people, due to our lifestyle and the amount of toxins that we're being exposed to, we're jamming up those drainage pathways and the toxins are overloading. And then once they overflow from the bucket, that's when we start to have major symptoms and major health problems. And for people today, there's still a percentage that get well just from making nutrition lifestyle changes. But oftentimes we got to go a lot deeper. I find that
Yeah.
it's more common now than it was 20 years ago. I would say I started really noticing that probably about 10 years ago,
Hmm.
that it was just harder to get people well.
Yeah.
And we had to go deeper with things just because I think it's just the bombardment of toxicity, the electromagnetic frequencies that we're all around and being exposed to. It's just kind of a bombardment of abnormal stressors
Yeah.
that our ancestors weren't exposed to. We know that stress itself is very beneficial. That's why we exercise. Exercise is beneficial stress.
Mhm.
It's why we might do things like intermittent fasting, cold plunge, things like that. These are all stressors that our ancestors faced for short bouts, and it creates resilience in our body, and it creates a better buffer for stress that we face in our life. But today we're being exposed to so many newer and more chronic stressors.
Yeah.
Having mercury in our body, like with let's say amalgam fillings, um, being around high voltage EMFs all day long, right? Every day, having terrible circadian rhythms, right? Because we have blue
Yeah.
light exposure. So we're being exposed to a lot of these things chronically that are just, really shutting down our mitochondria, shutting down our body's ability to produce cellular energy, and, ultimately causing, a vicious cycle of inflammation in our system. And so sometimes for a lot of these more complicated cases, we need to do more. Lifestyle is always important. It's always kind of the foundation,
Mhm.
but we need to do more to kind of accelerate the process of detoxifying and recharging their cellular energy.
Makes sense. So, if you were advising people, and I know you do, so I
Yeah.
kind of laying this up, right? But if you were trying to avoid getting to the place where now you need all this support, and you're an innovative doctor, right? Like you have businesses and books and content, like so it means you embrace innovation and you embrace technology. At the same time, those are some of the things holding people back or making it harder for them to get better if they're down, right?
Mhm.
Versus 20 years ago. How would you advise somebody who maybe got out of the rut and now doesn't want to, they want to live in the modern world, but they
Yeah.
don't want to get sick again? And, obviously you do both. So do you have like frameworks or methodologies and maybe some actionable things that people could latch on to where they can still feel like they're part of today and the
Yeah.
future, but also not get overloaded with toxins and
Totally.
then have to do a comeback?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I would say there's a couple key things. Number one is we want to have the right mindset that we come into life with every single day. It's a growth mindset. It's kind of what I was talking about before.
Yeah.
We're constantly trying to work and get better. We're being humble. Um, Honestly, having a growth oriented mindset where you're always working on just getting better, realizing, you're a work in progress, but also being humble really brings a lot of peace. You
Mhm.
don't have to be perfect all the time. You're not going to be, you're going to let people down around you, but you're always working to get better.
Yeah.
And you take full accountability for everything that happens in your life.
Yeah.
It really helps bring peace, and that's going to bring down stress in your life. I think that's super, super critical. And then from there, making sure that obviously you're trying to focus on good nutrition. So when you're eating, I always recommend getting foods that have maximal nutrients, minimal toxins.
Mhm.
So the first step there is getting rid of ultra processed foods. So there's a difference between ultra processed and processed.
Yeah.
Ultra processed is something that really doesn't even it doesn't even represent food necessarily, right? It's mostly chemical ingredients.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas a processed food could be like extra virgin olive oil, right?
Mhm.
That actually can be one of the healthiest things you put in your body if it's a high polyphenol extra virgin olive oil. So the ultra processed is the things that most people would understand would be chips, pretzels, candy bars, candy, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Got to get rid of that. Okay. I would avoid seed oils as much as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. And then try to go as organic as possible. If you can get 50 to 60% of your diet organic, I think that's great. Trying to go grass fed, organic, wild caught with your animal products, pasture raised. And that's going to reduce the toxic load on your system when you do that. So that's key. And then making sure you're really prioritizing good sleep hygiene. So like in my house, at about 8:30, we put our kids down, my wife and I, and then we make sure all the lights are dim. When the sun sets, everything's dimmed in the house, all the lights. And then we put on our blue light blocking glasses. We want to block out as much of the blue light as possible. That blue light blocks melatonin. Melatonin is this antioxidant that can slip into your mitochondria, protect the mitochondria. On top of that, it's also your sleep hormone, which helps you get good, deep, restorative sleep. And melatonin really works well with growth hormones. So when melatonin's going up, growth hormone should also be going up at night. And growth hormone is your quintessential anti-aging hormone, and it's really key for tissue repair and recovery.
Yeah.
And so we don't want anything that's going to block our melatonin and human growth hormone. So getting those blue light blocking glasses, dimming all the lights, reducing time on electronics, Doesn't mean you have to go to sleep immediately, right? But
Mhm.
you're out of the bright lights, the blue lights. You might read, you might talk with your spouse or significant other, and doing your best to do that, and then making sure your bedroom is a sanctuary, as dark as possible, cool, creating an environment that sets you up for really good quality sleep. And you can use wearables like an Aura Ring to help track that, and that's really helpful. So I think that's really good advice. Really dialing in the sleep. Okay, dialing in your breathing as well, making sure you're a nasal breather and not a mouth breather. Simple things you can do like mouth taping at night. You can do that for like a month where you tape your mouth at night. It seems, wow, like if I tape my mouth at night, I'm not going to breathe.
Right.
But it teaches you to breathe out of your nose, and you train your nervous system to be a nasal breather. And you can do it throughout the day. Just take a moment and just be intentional about how you're breathing for a minute or two, and that
Mhm.
you're nasal breathing. And that increases what's called nasal nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator, so it helps open up the blood vessels and bring more oxygen, circulating oxygen, into the brain, into all the major regions of the body. In particular, nasal nitric oxide gets it up into the brain. And that way it's going to help the mitochondria produce more energy, and you're going to feel better, right? And you're going to save your brain cells. And
Yeah.
so sleeping, breathing, proper light exposure, getting out in the sun every single day, at least, 15, 30 minutes. I recommend 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes midday or more, 15 minutes minimum if possible,
Mhm.
and then 15 minutes around sunset. There's an ancient proverb that says, if you want to have great energy during the day, watch the sun rise. And if you want to sleep well at night, watch the sun set.
Yeah.
And there's all these unique frequencies, right? This near infrared, infrared, far infrared, red light, right? UV light that we're getting during the day that have all these beneficial effects on our mitochondria, our cell voltage, and on our circadian rhythm as well, and set us up for great energy during the day and great sleep at night.
Mm.
So getting proper light exposure, just absolutely critical. And nowadays there's all different devices, infrared sauna, red light. You don't necessarily have to have them, but they can be beneficial, really beneficial for this. But utilize the sunlight, right? Utilize sunlight and the different times of the day to get a lot of this beneficial light exposure. And then at night, trying to drop that light exposure as much as possible, super critical. I think those are kind of foundational principles. And then, do everything you can to minimize your overall exposure. Like there's a lot of things that we're putting on our body. Anything you put in your body, like the food you're consuming, the water you're drinking, right, on your body, like soaps, shampoos, moisturizers, lotions. You want to be as natural as possible with those things.
Mm.
Okay. I think that's really, really critical. As far as EMF, there are things you can do. It can get a little more complicated, that's for sure. But nowadays you can even set like Wi-Fi on like an automatic switch or a timer. So you could turn it off at night before you go to bed. So at least when you're sleeping,
Mhm.
you have a lower EMF exposure, right? I mean, your neighbor might have it on that might kind of reach into your house, but at least your house isn't, putting out this massive message. And so you can shut it off and turn it back on, or set an automatic timer. You don't have to think about it. That's what we have in our house. So like 11 p.m., boom, Wi-Fi goes off,
Yeah.
comes back on at 6 a.m. So we know, hey, we shouldn't be using our phones that late, but it's weekend. We might still be doing stuff. I might be watching a college football game or something, right? But typically we want to be sleeping for sure between 11, and we're usually sleeping, or we must, I might get up at 6:30. So I don't need Wi-Fi on during that period of time. Right. And so we make sure that, it's turned off. And so people can set that up in their house. That's one way to reduce EMF exposure. Get grounding as much as possible. Like for me, I get out a few times a day. I'm fortunately able to work from home. Okay. So I have this benefit. And I have my own house. And so I'm able to walk out in the front yard barefoot and get out in the grass, dirt, sand, get out in nature. I've got woods in my backyard. And so the more we're in nature, and particularly grounded, like having like actual our hands touching nature, our feet touching nature, to me, it's like showering your electromagnetic field.
Mm.
Right. So we're exposed to phones, our cell phones, computers, things like that. That's dirtying our electromagnetic field.
Mm.
Okay. Which is fine. Like our kids go out and they're going to play in the mud or dirt. It's fine as long as we bathe them, at the end of the day. Right.
Yeah.
And so having some exposure is fine, but you want to also back that up with getting out in nature to kind of shower and clean off that electromagnetic field. And I think that's really just how God designed it. We're supposed to be spending time in nature. It has a very calming effect. helps boost our parasympathetic nervous system, our vagus nerve. And that's going to improve our heart rate variability. It's going to improve our ability to digest, to heal, to repair, to stabilize our blood sugar, right? To sleep better at night. And so try to make sure you're getting more time in nature with your body, some of your body exposed. I mean, all of us have been on the beach. We take a walk on the beach and we're like, I feel so much better. Like a lot of that life stress has gone down. And part of that is the healthy electromagnetic field that we're getting from being at the beach, walking barefoot, being exposed to those healthy electromagnetic fields can be so beneficial.
Masterclass in 5 to 10 minutes there on how to optimize health. So very much appreciated.
Yeah, simple things. None of that costs any money.
Right.
Things I just talked about too.
Absolutely. There was 3 things I want to touch on there, which I thought were very powerful. Number one, you said, if your mindset is, I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm going to try every single day to get better. I think there's this notion of people are scared to try anything because they're going to look stupid and not be good at it.
Yeah.
But then the irony in that is it's unreasonable to assume that you would be good at anything new. And so therefore it doesn't matter. All that matters is if you even try to do one thing a day for a year, you try 365 things a day to improve yourself. And at some point, some momentum will build in something that you resonated with, right? And so I think that's a really important point that you basically, this whole conversation said that has to be the key, because if you're not doing anything, nothing will happen. And so we need to get into a rhythm of consistency, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I think that is such a core root of your message that's going to resonate.
100%.
The second thing I did want to dive a little bit into, I think a lot of people get very confused when people talk about toxic load, toxicity, overwhelming with toxicness. Could you define for us, in your opinion, what is the definition of toxic and toxic load, just so that we're all on the same page?
For sure. So, we have toxins in our air, water, food. These are chemicals basically that create oxidative stress or rusting in our body. And so, for example, an apple is, you take a bite out of an apple, you let it sit there, right? It browns, right? It's oxidative stress from the environment. The outer skin is antioxidants in the skin that's actually protecting the apple from oxidation, right? Or if we leave, metal out and it gets wet, it starts to rust, right? Well, that happens inside of our body as well. And so we're all oxidizing to some degree all the time, and actually it's beneficial for our body. That's how we produce what we call endogenous, or produce inside, antioxidant defense systems. It's critical. It's how we get rid of cancer cells, things like that. But when we're bombarded with chemicals, particularly, you think about things like microplastics. Okay. We have plastics everywhere. We're being exposed to phthalates, BPA, parabens in our makeup and home care products, pesticides, herbicides. A lot of these things, they have a very detrimental effect on our body. And many of them are called forever chemicals, right? Because they don't even break down in nature, right? So it's like they don't even naturally combust. See, our body, even our microbiome, is producing toxins, right? They're called endogenous, right? So they're produced inside of our body. And, for example, bad bacteria will eat nutrients and poop out toxins. Good bacteria, good microbes, or a healthy microbiome will eat toxins. So they'll actually get rid of toxins and they'll produce B vitamins and all kinds of good nutrients for our body. But we're always producing some toxins. This is why it's so important that we poop, right? That actually, when we're pooping, we're getting rid of enormous amounts of endotoxins and other toxins in our that we've been exposed to, right? And so we constantly have to keep those drainage pathways open and be moving these things out. It just happens to be, we live in a time where we have incredible technological breakthroughs, and it's amazing. It's made our life, it's so much better to live our life now than when we had to go to an outhouse to go to the bathroom, right?
Right.
Where we can actually sit in air conditioning, right?
Yeah.
And sit in our bathroom. I don't think anybody would want to go back 500, 1,000 years and live that kind of lifestyle. Right. But there's also downsides to the lifestyle that we live. And the downsides are that we are being exposed to a high amount of chemicals and new electromagnetic frequencies that have a that cause a stress response and cause oxidative stress inside of our body. And we have to be aware of it, and we have to do what we can to help mitigate it. You're not going to get rid of it, and you shouldn't even try to get rid of it 100%. But you want to try to reduce your overall exposure to it.
Mhm.
And then make sure that when I say drainage pathways, the way we eliminate toxins is through respiration, so breathing,
Mm.
through urination, so we need to be peeing it out, defecation, pooping it out, and then perspiration, sweating it out. That's how we get toxins out. A good majority come out through our breathing. So exercise can help with that, right? Breathing practices can help with that.
Mm.
We need to make sure that we're peeing and pooping our way to good health. Whenever I'm working with clients, one of the big complaints that I get, people say, I feel a lot better, but it seems like I got to go to the bathroom every hour. And I'm like, that's good. You got to pee and you got to poop your way to good health. We got to get rid of the bad stuff.
Yeah.
And so we got to do that. Sweating, exercise helps with sweating. Using a sauna, something along those lines can be one of the best ways to help open up these drainage and detoxification pathways and move toxins out of our body. So hopefully that helps answer that question.
No, it absolutely does. And I think it just contextualizes really nicely with examples of, if I'm confused about what is a toxin, here's like very concrete examples of it. And then what are the ways that you can get rid of them, which also a lot of people don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You did touch up on, which I think is a very interesting topic, especially for somebody who is innovative and looks at technology as a net positive for our society. This is maybe a good transition into a conversation of the future. So, notoriously, humans are optimists, or else we wouldn't be sitting in a high rise right now talking to each other, right? Or we might have never met if it were 500 to 1,000 years ago. Yet there's practices from that time that still serve us well. How do you envision, maybe into the future, how this all is going to play out, right? Is it we still have to desperately hold on to some of these things that are good for us, like being in nature, even though that's happening less? We're going to keep innovating. The world is going to change. Who knows? We might be in Mars soon, right? So what's kind of your view of the future, and how should people be maybe thinking about preparing for it? And or is it just don't worry about it until it happens, and we'll solve problems at that time?
That's a great question. I would say those foundational things that I talk about when it comes to health, those foundational things aren't going to change.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's ever going to be a drug that replaces sleep. If you could bottle up what sleep does in your body
Yeah.
and sell it as a drug, I mean, it would be the greatest miracle that we've ever, found. I don't think that's possible. I don't think we're going to be able to do that. We're not going to be able to bottle up and sell nature. These things are always going to be beneficial for us. And so we've just got to be intentional about it. I think what technology offers us is a lot of stuff that you're doing, like biofeedback, getting immediate feedback on whether certain strategies are benefiting us or not, right? Like when I started wearing a Aura ring, for example, I could see that, hey, when I read, like even for 5 minutes of reading with my blue light blocking glasses, but just reading before I went to bed, before I got up and actually went into my bed, reading in my living room, benefited my heart rate variability, right? And so I would have known that just by
Right.
predicting it. So it's like getting instant feedback on what meals, everybody, there are certain foundational principles that I think will benefit everybody from a nutrition perspective. But one person may do great with sweet potato, another person not. One person does great with, steak, and another person doesn't. And so getting instantaneous feedback on the meals that we're consuming and how that's impacting our blood glucose, our insulin, our inflammation levels, things like that
Yeah.
can be amazing. So people can make changes faster to
Yeah.
get the desired health results. So getting kind of instant measurables and instant accountability, I think from a technological perspective, is really beneficial. And the things we should be measuring are, some blood glucose measures, right?
Mhm.
Inflammation, if we're able to measure that,
Yeah.
instantaneously. We can be looking at sleep quality, right? And heart rate variability and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think just the ability, I think as things shift and we've got more technology that we're interfacing with, just being able to track those things and seeing, in a sense, like, okay, when I'm working on my computer for 6 hours a day, right? Things are good. But when I do 6.5 hours a day, right? Now my heart rate variability goes down. So we start to understand what's our threshold,
Mhm.
right? What's the threshold where we seem to see a big dip in a performance, a big drop, right? We can perform high when we're getting this load of, electromagnetic frequencies or screen time, things that we know are stressors on the body, but I can handle this amount and still perform well. But when I do this amount, I can't. Or if I if I get 30 minutes of nature, now I can handle 7.5 hours of screen time because I took that time to get out in nature, get sunshine, and now my resilience and my ability to buffer the negative effects of the screen time and the electromagnetic frequencies now went up. I was, more resilient to it. And resilience is really your ability to adapt to the stress that you're facing. So if you're more resilient, you can handle more stress. And so if we can measure these things and give real-time feedback and we're able to actually see that and then know how to tailor our day and our work performance around it, I think that, as humans, we can be more and more productive and, enjoy more success in all areas of our life.
Amazing and very well said. Last couple pockets to dive into. In the modern day, I think people have a decision to make on a lot of different things. Hey, what's the best diet for me? Keto, Atkins, carnivore, vegan. And then you should be doing supplements, detox, probiotics, gut, brain. Then it's, no, you should be doing sleep optimization, sleep hygiene. So there's all these pockets that people can latch onto. Do you feel like there's one core? And I know you came from a nutrition background and understanding that nutrition is the most important. And you've also mentioned that I think sleep, if we could package sleep in a pill, it would be the best thing
Mhm.
ever. Is there one thing that you would and maybe in your courses and training that you guys do, is there something that you always start with, or is it much more of a look, we got to look at the variables of where you're at and then we kind of tackle it from there? I'd love to see if there's some pattern that you've noticed, and has that changed over the years?
Yeah. I mean, I would say in years past, I jumped right into nutrition because I have lots of interests when it comes to nutrition. I think it's something that most of the people that follow me have a lot of interest in
Yeah.
nutrition. So it's easy to jump into that. But I found that mindset is really the most critical thing. And I
Yeah.
tell people it's the boring stuff. It's mindset, it's sleep, it's how you breathe,
Yeah.
right? These things are just huge levers when it comes to your health. And,
Yeah.
and nutrition is very important, but it's one of the, it's in that kind of same grouping of levers. And so we got to really start to dial it in there. And I think ultimately, kind of like how we started this interview, having a compelling vision, which is, it goes back to mindset,
Yes.
right? That is going to help you overcome the friction that you might face with other lifestyle changes, the uncomfortability that comes with it, the vulnerability
Yeah.
that can come. Like for me, I've always been a high performing type person. So when I get into an area where I don't have a whole lot of knowledge, I feel almost vulnerable and weak, right? I think
Yeah.
a lot of men feel that way, especially,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, I don't want to feel vulnerable and weak, so then I'll just not do it,
Yeah.
right? But having the right mindset can help you go from feeling that vulnerable and weak because you're novice and just understanding it. Hey, I'm new.
Yeah.
It's like anything else, it takes me some time to learn, to an area of strength and realizing, hey, because I'm new, I can be a sponge, right?
Yeah.
I don't already have all these fixed ideas on this. And actually, it's an opportunity for me to learn more and absorb faster. And I can learn from mentors and coaches and things like that and figure out what mistakes they made so I can grow and accelerate my growth faster.
Brilliant. We'll end it there, Dr. Jockers. Where can people find you, engage with you, follow you? Please let us know.
Yeah, drjockers.com. I'm on YouTube, social media, and my podcast, Dr. Jockers Functional Nutrition Podcast.
It was an honor having you, and everyone's going to appreciate this insight.
Thank you, Boris.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. Very well done.
All right.